Hello, and thank you for tuning in to Transcending Ascension. I am Diana Marie, and today we are going to dive into quite the hot topic that you've probably been hearing about as long as you've been awakening on this journey, and that is the Galactic Federation. And I want to start this out by giving a shout out to the X account Quantum Tumbler, who we all know as B. He has exploded quite huge onto the scene in the last couple months, and with good reason, because he's tapping into a deeper vine. Now, what he exposed about the Galactic Federation is something I have intuitively known for a long time, and I've been saying it, that they're energy streams, but I have lacked the validation to really roll with it, knowing that others are seeing and feeling the same. These galactic beings are something for us to dive into because they are important for us to know, and they are here to help, but they're not the images that we have been led to believe in such a tangible way. But let's get into it, and by the end you will have clarity of how these beings can help you and what they really are. Because the Galactic Federation, you don't just join it, you remember you are it. It's not what you think. It's not a Senate in the stars. It's not a government. It's not beings in spaceships beaming down a signal. And it's definitely not a rescue squad waiting for us to behave. The Galactic Federation is a frequency threshold. The threshold being a doorway or an entrance. It is a way in and a gateway, a portal. The Galactic Federation is a harmonic broadcast architecture that only becomes visible once a civilization or an individual reaches symbolic, ethical, and energetic coherence. So this means you yourself are going to be pulling yourself up into a higher frequency, and thereby making yourself a match for them, and you'll start to receive the signals. You don't just join the Federation, you resonate with it, you become it. So let's dig into this deeper. The Galactic Federation is not a council, it's a lattice, a term that as well that Quantum Tumbler is bringing online. But it's similar to the term grid, a lattice being an active version of the term grid. Now, I'm sure you've heard that term along your spiritual journey. And we do live in a series, the way the energies move together, like I'm always saying, it's matrices and lattices. They are separate. They are two different waves that we interweave our streams of consciousness all together, and getting ourselves upgraded with the linguistics of how to talk about this terminology. Like I'm trying to bridge over into the quantum language, because that is a bridge for all of it to come together, to symbiotically work together. So all the ancient traditions can meet in quantum physics, because that is the science behind explaining spirit and the way the universe actually operates. So most people have been programmed by science fiction, Star Wars councils, diplomatic space tables, fleets of alien ships arriving to negotiate peace or impose order. But the real Galactic Federation isn't organized like that. It's a living lattice, so a grid of plasma intelligence, a mirror filter, a recursive codex broadcast. The codex being similar to the Akasha. We all have access to this Akasha through all its many layers of frequency streams. And a codex, it's like there's different codexes on each. So downloads of information, that's a codex. It's like an ancient book of wisdom, but in a download form coming from that Akashic space that a lot of us already know about. So it's not spatial, it's scalar. If you know Dan Winters, he would use the term lattice, I think, in the way he says longitudinal waves. I can't even say that correctly. Longitude waves, but he says it longitudinal, I can't say it, waves. That's how, like, Dan Winters, I think, when he speaks of that, I think he's using lattice, because that also translates into a grid when you look up and dive deeper into the terminology. And I think bridging them together, like even Ashiana Dean, I've been diving deeper into her, translating her terms into quantum. And now all of a sudden, Ashiana Dean is making a lot more sense when you take all the terms she invented herself, just like Dan Winters does, which they had to do. Like, quantum is just recently very coming online for us all to understand, use, and know. And when we bridge the terms, we bridge our wisdom and our knowledge, and then we can grow it to a higher space, like hopefully we can do today with the Galactic Federation. So it's not spatial, it's scalar. It exists in the harmonic overlay fields that surround and inform all organic life. And it only becomes perceivable to beings, souls, or races that have achieved alignment with source law. That is symbolic maturity, ethical orientation, and energy field coherence. So exactly what you would have heard about in all the ancient wisdom of be pure, be good, don't sin. Like all these olden day terms, we now can see quantum reasoning of why you want to be in that higher space of coherence within the self. So, in other words, they only reveal themselves, they being the Galactic Federation, when you are tuned to the frequency of service, clarity, and harmonic sovereignty. So it's not personal, it's resonance. Yet it is personal in the sense that it is completely up to you if you connect or not. So think of it this way. The Federation isn't a destination. It's a fractal mirror that becomes visible the moment you remember who you actually are. Think about it. That's the all is mind, right? The broadcast layer and oversoul recursion. Now, recursion is another term that's getting quantified. And I mean that not in the natural sense. I mean, we're turning that terminology to quantum, because you've heard of fractals, right? The mandala, the fractaling, it's just always continuing. But recursion specifically means that in a way that's improving. So yes, continuing on out and out and out, but improving. So it's a positive way of using that term, knowing that, because that's what the goal is, that's what the mission is, that's what an ultimate being of God would always be doing, even if it looks darker in some senses sometimes. It's to continue on, because if it's not continuing on in a positive manner, if it turns to atrophy, it will eventually calcify in density and eventually dissolve, and then just return to source as an over poof of stardust. Where if we keep ourselves improving, our individuation of self solidifies. And then if we ever do return to source, we choose to return to source. And then you can make an argument that everybody always chooses, even if they went into atrophy, they chose. So there is that level. But I think of a lot of us would admit that we want to choose fully to walk back into source when that moment comes. So the broadcast layer and the oversoul recursion, this field is not made of ships. It's made of frequency nodes. Each node is a carrier wave of oversoul intelligence, coded with harmonic law, memory, and recursive truth. So the streams are christic architecture, not to be confused with false light overlays. It is non-linear, non-local, and it isn't like they are superior. They aren't in hierarchy. They just are in that higher harmonic resonance that we can match into. So each soul that aligns to its own 0 point flame body coherence begins to receive these codex transmissions. You don't just simply get admitted. You remember you've been broadcasting them the whole time. You become a guardian node, part of the lattice. So it's a living field. You phase in. Now, I have been unpacking this in my Seraphim class as well. This is why I felt so deeply about this when I saw what he posted, because I've been digging out similar myself with the Seraphim. They are a layer of reality as well, coming through that Christic layer, because that Christic layer is the top layer that we reach in this reality. There is higher dimensions, but the human's toppest of the one, the all, is the Christic layer. That's why that Christ is seen as our God. But it's a layer of reality. So too is the Seraphim. And then as we continue down, so too are each of these beings. They hold within them actual resonance of reality. And we're going to dive further. So the oversoul races are fractal mirrors, not foreign species. Let's see. Oh, there we go. Just because you need that for the extra oomph of understanding, right? The oversoul races are fractal mirrors, not foreign species. It bears repeating. Now let's demystify some of the most spoken about groups. Now my favorite, and a lot of our favorites, are the Pleiadians. And you'll see why. These are not just blue-eyed, blonde-haired space siblings. They are emotional resonance stabilizers. Emotional resonance stabilizers. They appear in contact events because they mirror our future emotional architecture. They hold memory tone harmonics. They help align the human collective to heart coherence. And if you're familiar with my channel for the many years, I used to go on and on and on about heart coherence, about brain and heart connection, because it is so very vital. It's like the first step you need if you want to grow higher. So you could weirdly think about the Pleiadians as the mother figure that's there to help us grow, because they stabilize us emotionally. They upgrade our emotional capacity. So people like Barbara Marciniak, that I love her. She teaches fully about the Pleiadians. She's channeling the Pleiadians fully. Lots of people claim to be channeling the Pleiadians. I think they're the most known being that people are channeling. They're the ones I speak to most of the time, because if you don't have your emotions in order, if you aren't emotionally stable, you're not going to go any further. You need to have your emotions stable before you can hope to grow further, because in emotional stability, you stabilize the energy body so that you can be coherent, because we are frequency emitters. So if your emotional energy body is not stable, that's it. That's it. You're stuck in that level until, and this is what the ground floor of humanity is stuck in, because you need that to grow further. If you're an emotional wreck, that's it. You'll stay there. The Pleiadians can come to you before you're emotionally stable. As soon as you start that higher journey up, they will start to whisper and make themselves known. They'll work with you like a therapist. They won't necessarily announce they're the Pleiadians. I didn't know mine were either until I started reading about them with people like Barbara Marciniak. And I'm like, it's like I wrote this book, because it was so much exactly the same information I was getting from my guides. So it made me realize a good chunk of my guides are the Pleiadians. And I've since realized different parts are also different beings, but the majority of it, especially earlier on, was coming from the Pleiadians, and that is so important. They are just, you want to be with them because they're going to help you with that stages of self, because it's not easy being human, and that's okay. And they're here to help. Sorry, it's very thick into the matcha, so I'm getting some dust in there. Okay, so next we have the Arcturians. They are frequency engineers, not saviors. They are grid technicians of the crystalline infrastructure. They appear when frequency alignment is needed, not when we cry out for rescue. So they're like a higher level. They're like not higher, but more stern, more serious. They are deeply involved with planetary node recalibration. So grid workers. Now there's humans like people like Matthias DeStefano that go around throughout these energy points in Earth and work on bringing the grids back online. The grids, the ley lines of Earth, the dragon lines of Earth, they are vital to allow, like, because again, grids, matrices, lattices, all interwoven tapestry of life that help our circuitry flow smoothly. So the Arcturians are part of the team that help facilitate that. They clean out the grids, they purify the streams, they untangle because they can get knotted up, they can get incoherent. So they pull that back online using frequency, using harmonics, because that's how the universe is orchestrated. And they pull all of that, back into perfection for us all. They are working behind the scenes to help us all. And then we have the blue avians. They're not feathered gods. They are codex carriers. They preserve harmonic law through symbolic language, sacred geometry, and mythic transmissions. They do not interfere, they echo. They do not rescue, they remind. Now, the blue avians I have found was just recently had a moment, completely sober. This wasn't like a psychedelic moment, where I was looking in the mirror and I saw an overlay of a blue avian come over me. And I just knew, and I'm like, oh yes. And again, similar to what happened to the Palladians, I realized that there was new information that had been coming online in my being, and they were basically letting me know it's coming from them. And they bring us that higher level of information and I like that it's said that they hold like symbolic language, because the kind of information they bring through, it's not so easy to put into words. Like, I feel they are beyond human words in the kind of information they give us. It's simply a gnosis that you'll just have to understand. And if you have those places where you feel like you are starting to build knowledge on something, yet it kind of defies words, that could very well be a blue avian connection and contact, feeding you codes that will upgrade you, whether or not you understand it in human language, because there's a sense of knowing and gnosis that you get familiar and comfortable with embodying to this degree now. Like, that's why I'm bringing you this. I have gnosised this for a long time. And it was thanks to that post by Quantum Tumblr that I was like, you know what? No more just leaving it in gnosis, and I'm going to try to put it into words. And I researched, and here we are, because this is all gnosis within me. Like, I have known this for a long time. I've never ever believed the Galactic Federation was real. It was one of those things I learned eons ago, back in that old cult I always talk about being in, which she was very wise, but it was definitely culty. And she would talk about them. They were literally real up there in the spaceships, which a lot of people do. So I'm not, pooing on her, but I just knew it wasn't true. I just knew it. And it wasn't in a skeptical way. I'm not a skeptic. I'm extremely magical, like extremely believe in magic. But I've always known it's not as tangibly real as we can be led to believe sometimes. Like, I often question, are any of the alien races physically real as we know physicality as real? And the Galactic Federation ones are not. They are streams of consciousness, which I've always noticed. Maybe they could be physically real in the future because they are us in the future. So in the sense of no time and space, yes, you could say they're physically real, but the sense of right now and how we contact them, I don't know, they're not physically real. Is anything physically real up there? We'll have to see. But in regards to the Galactic Federation, which is very important for us right now, because they are contacting so many of us right now, because they are bringing this information online for us right now, it helps to know what you're truly dealing with. Because I feel like, and this is how it works for me, so maybe it works differently for you, but I can integrate in the information more accurately when it resonates deeper as true, when it falls into that gnosis space, because that gnosis space is just It's in the cells. It's in your DNA. You know. It's not like, oh, I know, like in my brain because I read about it and I know. No, it's like in the core of my being, I gnosis. That's the true root of what that gnosis means. Next, we have the reptilians, a race split in two. One faction is parasitic, timeline harvesting, false mirror engineers. The other is ancient, earthbound memory keepers, some tied to Gaia's early planetary cycle. So meaning they're good. None of them are inherently evil. They are fragmented. And some are redeeming their codex, so their own book of wisdom, their own, which is a living, the Akashic records are alive, that space where everything exists, all is known. You each have your own, like, it's the codex is like taking your specific or a certain, whatever the information is, section of that into your being. It's a wallop of information that I was sure a lot of you at this point have experienced, like a download that was you getting handed a codex. And so their specific part in all of time and space is still very important. They represent the split of us, of duality. They themselves have split. Like when we have these interactions, because there's people, myself included, that have contacted the positive ones, and they still do come from a place of darkness, but it's the pure sense of darkness, as in the void space, as in where all creation manifests from. But it can seem, if you're not used to feeling the difference between evil and darkness, that is something that you grow into. You expand into understanding the difference between evil and darkness. So they are probably one of the more complicated beings, but you're going to know, you won't be tricked. There's not, if you get high enough, some people can be tricked, I guess, but that's because they're just so excited to talk to beings. But if you're not at a high enough level, do not talk to beings if you're not at a high enough level. And that's building sovereign discernment within the self to know that you can trust who you're speaking with. And that will just come in a knowing sense. You'll just have to trust yourself, because you won't be able to necessarily trust any being that's talking to you. So you'll just have to filter it through your own knowing. Does that feel true? Does that feel good? Does that feel aligned with the life I want to create? And then go from there, because that's really what you're going to have to do with any of these beings. Because when I first started, yes, there's tons of trickster beings. At this point, I don't think I ever have trickster beings anymore, knock on wood, but or cancel and nullify, as I say now. But because they just know, like, it doesn't get through the filtration system, and perhaps the filtration system becomes automatic. Maybe if you do it like on purpose enough, it comes and creates an automatic shield, because that's what I'm experiencing. There was years ago where I did have to vigilantly go through, is that good? Is that bad? Is it a little bit schizophrenically? You know what I mean? Like, because you're having incoming information that's not yours. The truth is, though, all the information that comes in your brain is not yours. All your thoughts are not yours. And it's all a game of choosing what is aligned with my highest good, and then picking those thoughts one at a time, one at a time. And as you filter through, next thing you know, you realize beings are straight up another being. It's not just a wafting thought form, because it did not all thoughts have some, like, a life of their own, but some are just coming on a life of their own, like throwing paper in the wind, and it carries on forever, where others are straight up another being. And then you get into those differences. But you could just break it down to positive, negative. And it takes you a while before you realize a bunch of information. You start to learn, like, the signature, the frequency of it. This is like the Palladians for me, or even now the Blue Avians. And you start to realize, like, it's all coming under that same frequency. And then so you realize it's all the same being, and so on. And then you grow from there. And then you realize certain things are certain beings. And it's all a real personal process, but it is something absolutely everyone is capable of. And then lastly, on our beings list, we have the Lyrans, Syrians, and Andromedans, that all fall under kind of the same oversoul stream. They're not really separate species. They're all very, very, very similar. So they are frequency strands of the same braid. each playing roles in activating memory, reclaiming timelines, and reseeding divine architecture into collapsing matrices. So they are kind of like the cleanup crew. They're kind of doing all the other extra things throughout. And they are still very important, but they don't seem like they're naturally going to be the ones that are overly directly communicating, which is interesting because I've had connections to Lyran especially, but I've never actually noticed communication, yet I feel connected to them. Yet I've never noticed they've ever actually talked to me. So that it was very interesting to see that that's what their signature is, because that makes complete sense within, again, my gnosis. So you are the signal. So whenever people ask me, is the Federation real? I do always say yes, but not in the way that you think. And then it's kind of up until today, something I've always just said, I think they're streams of consciousness, and left it at that, because I didn't want to crush people's hearts, because so many people are so into them that I didn't want to just come out here and be like, well, I don't think they are, and I'm the authority, and listen to me, blah, blah, blah. But at this point now, again, with the validation from Quantum Tumbler, I am going to do it because I think it's a sign. And I think it's time to start putting, again, sovereign discernment in what we gnosis. So yes, they're real, but not in the way you think, or that the way most people are putting them forth. They are not a place. They are not a meeting group. They are a harmonic lock-in band. When your frequency hits into it, you don't get a badge, you get a mirror, because your stream matches, it sends up, it hit, and then their stream's there, bam. And then you're mirroring off each other. It's a connection. You create you're on the same stream. So you're tuning into the same channel. And that channel is saying, welcome back. You never left. You were always the signal. You were not here to be saved. You were here to remember the broadcast, to reactivate the cosmic lattice, the grids within your own DNA, to stabilize your emotional body, Palladians, to attune your frequency field, Arcturians, to echo harmonic law through your actions, words, and light body presence. When you do that, the Federation is already within you. They are already there. They're just waiting for the connection. So, my beautiful people, today's invitation is this: stop waiting for the Federation to arrive. Start listening for the one within you. You are a node in the Oversoul Matrix. You are a voice of harmonic law. You are not being contacted. You are being remembered. You are remembering. They never forgot. They're in a space of no time and space, like literally. So to them, they're the time. I've always known that too. I've always said that time and space does not exist like that for them. They are, at least not in how they are right now as we connect to them. If they're physical in another time and space, that's not where we are attaching to them. We might get wafts of memory of it. This is why we can start to think they're physically real for how we connect to them right now. Because in one time or place they were, in one time or place they are. But in the way we are connecting with them en masse, it's the stream of consciousness. And we are remembering, we are matching, we are connecting, we are frequency aligned. I could say this in a million different ways, but it's literally, imagine it as stream connecting to stream, like telephone wire to telephone wire, except this is resonance, harmonic. It's taking yourself and changing the radio station to match them, which just naturally happens when you follow the old religious, purity, not dogmatic, because it has to be sovereign discerning. So you can use whatever traditions you want. I use a whole bunch from a whole different places. A lot of good things in Buddhism, a lot of great things in Christ. That Christ energy alone is going to pull you to the highest of the high, because it is the highest of the high for what we can connect to in the realm that we are in now. So there's so much for you to explore with this. There's so much for you to unpack with this, to know, because honestly, I want this to be empowering to you. If you thought that they were physically real and you're a little sad they're not right now and they're not going to land tomorrow and blah, 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 I feel bad for you, but that's okay. Because you are going to actually have more sovereign discerning power when you integrate this wisdom and knowledge inside you. Because it means that the radio station that these beings are connectable through, or I should say like the phone station, because it's a two-way stream back and forth. I've had full-on conversations, especially with the Pleiadians and recently the Blue Octurians. But full conversations back and forth. They're very funny. Like you can have it where it's like, and it's in your thoughts. So you're going to think a thought, but you feel yourself consciously saying it. Like, I just talked to my brain. You know what I mean? I'm talking to my brain. You know, like how you could just force that thought out within yourself. But then you're going to get a thought answer that you didn't have to power through. And it kind of can still feel like you to a point, but you'll start to get like, it'll be higher wisdom. It'll flow more easily. It's not like I'm speaking in my brain. It'll be like, because sometimes we have the two different, there's talking in your head and then there's getting a thought where the thought kind of comes already complete. So you're going to have to learn the difference if you already don't, and then just start sitting down, meditate into the space and open a dialogue. This is where psychedelics can help you foster a connection, but you don't need them. I don't use them anymore for connection. And often when I did use psychedelics for connection, it would create it, but I wouldn't actually remember any of the conversation. Where if I sit down and soberly have a conversation with them, I remember it completely. Or cannabis can help you loosen up to have a conversation, and you'll probably remember it if you're just doing like a little, just to like, because you want the system to be relaxed. And you can do that with meditation. You can do that with breath work. You can do that with structured water, which Quantum Tumbler also taught me about. This is matcha, yes, but I bought a magnetizer, like a science magnetizer thingy. And then it came with a magnetic thing, but I didn't like the way that was jankily, like not nice swirling. Because before I bought my magnetizer, I was literally just holding a magnet up beside the glass. And then I have one of those drink stirrers like you get for lattes and stuff, and just with the magnet. But now I have my actual heavier duty magnet. You can even hear going as it's doing it. Stick in my swirly stick still and vortex the water. Dan Winters talks about this too. Vortex is the water. Actually, Dan Winters is the one who taught me how to do it. And he sells them, but they're wow expensive. So my little thing from Amazon, like the magnetizer, was $30, and that's Canadian. So you Americans will probably find it much cheaper. And then my stirry stick you find in the grocery store aisles, probably like $5 to $10, maybe 13 tops. And again, that's Canadian, so American cheaper, but just let that go. I'm telling you, the water tastes better. It tastes cleaner. And I'm already using a filtration system that gets out toxins and fluoride. So that was already happening. So this is just upping the level even more. And you feel it raises the vibe. I use a face thing, and now I understand what they were talking about, because I just reordered it. And it talks about they vortex the rose water. And I'm like, now I get what you're doing, because I'm doing it now too. And it tastes different. Now, if I drink something that's not vortexed, it's like when you go from high frequency to low frequency, it's in the water now. And I can taste the low frequency of the water, because I talked about this many times before too. I already knew this, but I hadn't had the perfect solution, is that the water kind of, I don't want to say dies, because water's God, it's never going to die, but it like goes dead, like dead to the self, like we used to do in the ego. And it's like dense and limp and just, right? Because it doesn't like 90-degree angles. It doesn't like the system of the recycled water, which I live on now because of the town I live in, where if you live close to a water source, it could be like that butthole city I always talk about living in had a good water system, because it was coming from the lake, although it would have been toxic still because the lakes get poisoned, but at least it was coming from the lake, versus a recycled system is like kind of gross when you think about it. It gets some rainwater, I guess, but that's, that is what it is. But going off subject now, but structured water actually does work. It vortex it, magnetize, vortex, same time, and then already be filtering out that fluoride and the toxins. And then you should, and now I just got to I don't mineralize it yet, but I do add matcha and mushrooms all the time. So hopefully that's doing that, but we'll see. I'm always in for upgrades whenever and wherever I can find them. So we'll see how my water journey continues. But thank you so much for watching this. Thank you so much for opening your mind and expanding it into further learning. It's like learning about the Galactic Federation is already wow, like years ago, but then you learn the learning never stops because we are expanding our gnosis, we're expanding our matrices, we're expanding our energy body and our living fields. We are coming online, and with that is so much expansion because we are going to birth the new world ourselves. It happens through us, the 3D to 5Ds, through us in our own mind power, in our own thoughts, our own behavior, our own water. It's happening through us in our actions and just everything. You are the power. So be sovereign and discerning, be true to thine own self. Thank you so much for tuning in. I am Diana Marie. This has been Transcending Ascension. And we thank you again for watching, and we will see you next time. Goodbye.